just one per family would be good. It's the Constitution and Bylaws of King's Fellowship. This is not official yet. That takes the affirmation of all of us as a church together to confirm this, which is the whole congregational piece. And then also what he's passing out is a membership covenant. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight, is that covenant. And the bylaws, the Constitution, that is for you guys to take, to look at, to read over, even check spelling on things if you'd like to. Google has been helping us out with that. But we've been pouring over that and looking at the wording. What do we want? What do we believe? I guess the best way to say it is, who do we believe King's Fellowship needs to be on paper? And this is not just as we get started, but thinking 15, 20 years down the road, this document helping us stay on track and be faithful to who we believe Scripture is calling us to be as King's Fellowship. So, love for you guys to pour over that, look at it, ask questions. We can sit down and talk about it if you have questions on it. We have to have that legally to be a church. And also, we want that to be something that we as a body go, yeah, that's who we are. That's who we're committed to be. And then the church covenant is something we'll talk a little bit about. One of our distinctives is that we will have membership that is meaningful. Meaningful membership. Now, you may have been in a church before where membership might consist of you just signing a card as you came up front, and you're a member. You might not even realize you were a member until you went to another church and they said, well, we need to move your letter. What letter are you talking about? I still don't know if I have a letter somewhere out there. And membership might be something that means a lot to you from your background that you come from. We believe that the local church, as a believer, should be vitally important to us. And the relationships we have are not just show up on Sunday, take what is offered to us, and then come back the next week. We believe that we are entering into a covenant relationship together, committing ourselves to one another, to encourage each other, to provide for one another when there are needs, to give to the church, to support each other through serving like everybody's been doing so far. We really strongly believe that part of the authority piece, the profession, the keys of the kingdom, the binding, the loosing, has a lot to do with what we do on the front end in our membership. There needs to be, if you think about us as a flock, right? That's what we are, flock together. And if we're trying to shepherd the flock, well, we need some fences around the flock. Who's actually our flock, who's not? Who's coming into the flock? What gate is that they're coming in and out of? And things like this church covenant, our membership process, are things that help us with that, help us identify. And it helps you as a congregation to know when somebody comes into our body that they've been asked questions, we have a profession from them, they've been baptized as a believer, all these things that are requirements that you see in there. And we'll be able to stand before you and we say, hey, we're presenting Billy Bob here to you, and be all affirm them and accept them as members. And then you would have time to ask questions. Or maybe you know something like, hey, actually that person isn't who they say they are. You need to know this about them. That's part of the whole congregational piece of this meaningful membership. Anything y'all want to say about meaningful membership? Does it mean membership mean anything to you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I think on the bylaws, well, on both of these things, actually, bylaws and the covenant.
The bylaws and the covenant. I mean, this week, so, David and Renee and I made like this a priority this week to kind of read through everything. We read through line by line, and just kind of make sure. Of course, we made some changes where we felt like some changes needed to be made, and even like wording things differently or making sure we were succinct in the way we said things. What we're really trying to do is, we use this term as we talked about it, we're producing something here that's going to outlive us, okay? Like when we're not passing through one day, we want, like our children who are here, for this thing not to be a hindrance to them, okay? So we're thinking far in the future. Once again, who knows how long King's Fellowship will be a church, but we pray it's for decades and decades and decades. And we hope that our children benefit from this document right here, okay? And that they don't have to work hard. We are seeing Grace Fellowship, they're having to kind of go back and change a few things in their bylaws right now from when they started. And, we feel like maybe they're making the time we have to do that. We made provisions for that in here as well. So, as David said, please read over this, check it for spelling. We try to do that, but, we're not English teachers. Some of you English teachers out there may be able to catch some things that we didn't. But this is very important for decades down the road, not just right now. Okay, so try to think that way when you read things. If you read something and you think, I'm not really sure what that's saying right there. I'm not really sure. Maybe even the language seems a little clunky. Maybe we could say that better. Maybe we could say it more succinctly. Bring that back to us and go, hey, maybe we can think about how we would reword this.
Yeah, it was really a joy for us in a lot of ways this week. Toiling over every little word, making sure we wanted to say things the way we said them in this document, very carefully. And this is part of the process of the binding portion of the keys to the kingdom, and so that all of us who are joining King's Fellowship together, binding ourselves to one another and to the kingdom of God, have looked through these things. So be part of our becoming members are looking through these things. And again, we want you to hold us accountable for any sort of language that you think may could be better. We spend a lot of time on it, but of course we're not perfect with anything. So definitely grammar and spelling mistakes, but also any theological issues you think or things we could say better ways. A lot of this would be unnecessary if this church is only going to last for a year. But we hope this church is here long after all of us are gone. And we want King's Fellowship to be these things long after us. And so this is, like Adam's saying, our hope of cementing that once and for all. Okay, I think David's going to talk a little bit about the process of becoming members, how we're going to do that together, as all of us become members together. Obviously, a little bit unorthodox, all of us doing this together at the same time as we become a church. He's going to talk about what that's going to look like. And again, just feel free to raise your hand if you have questions, and we can talk about them now.
All right, you've heard us say that we are a church in the making, that King's Fellowship doesn't exist yet as a church. We are under the umbrella of Grace Fellowship, but on April 13th, we pray that at least 3 of us would come together, hopefully more, hopefully all of us, hopefully everybody.
Which 3?
I know. Well, I guess our locks are in, so we'll have 6 at least. That we would come together and covenant together and actually become a church that is, it's like we're engaged right now, all right? We're engaged, we're getting there, and then we'll have our service where we actually covenant together. This covenant that you see right there, what we'll probably do is recite that together, all those that are becoming members, and don't let that weird you out. Recite it together, and then take the supper together for the first time as King's Fellowship, as a church. We'll be sent out by Grace Fellowship that day, and we're also going to be, we'll be recognized and ordained as the pastors of King's Fellowship if y'all affirm that in us on that day. And so a lot happening on that day, and then King's Fellowship is sent out. I said the wrong date. April 6th is when that'll happen. First Sunday in April. And then our plan after that is April 13th. April 13th. I like when we find all day not golfing and I start talking and it's it's painful to watch. April 13th will be our first Sunday in Gadsden. We want to have a Sunday to have service in the downtown Civic Center together before Easter, when we just, that'd be crazy if we showed up. We'll figure it out on Easter Sunday. And so April 6th will be that day when we come together as a church in covenant and sent out. And we're officially no longer in the making, but we are King's Fellowship. And so we are longing for that day to be here and be here before you know it. But until then, there's things that we believe need to happen in order for this church to really be congregational and elder-led. And so we're trying to lead you through this process. And for the congregation, which we will be, to have their say in all of these things. Okay? And so that's why we gave you this constitutional bylaws. That's why you have this membership agreement. And here's how we foresee this membership process going once we are a church. And then I'll explain how we're going to walk through this while we're a church in the making. All right? So if we're already a church and somebody would like to become a member of Grace Fellowship, King's Fellowship. King's Fellowship, sorry. If someone wants to be a member of King's Fellowship, what they would do is go through our membership classes. We would just have membership classes. We probably won't have those all the time as we start out, but we will have membership classes that people can understand. Think about all these classes we're doing on Sunday night, condensed to like 6 weeks, like 6 classes instead of the 12 that we've been doing, that we're in the process of doing. So really, really trying to narrow down who is King's Fellowship and who does somebody need to know that we are as they're coming to join. And what questions do they need to ask? What questions do we need to ask them? So 6-week class of who King's Fellowship is, so they can know. Now, just because somebody takes that class doesn't mean they automatically become a member, but in order to be a member, they would have to take those classes, or at least most of them, in order to do that. And then also what would happen in that class would be presented with these, or you'd be given these, this church covenant, and you'd read through it, and you would have to sign that and give it in. You're committing to this, the life of this church. Right? You're signing that covenant. You're becoming one of us. You would also have, and don't let this word scare you, but an interview with one of the pastors. And it's really just a meeting for them to get to know you, for you to get to know the pastors, and to ask any questions that you might have. We would ask questions about, like, tell us what church you've been at. Have you been baptized as a believer? That would be one of our requirements for membership, that you are baptized as a believer. And then, are you in good standing at the church you left at? Is it okay if I call that pastor and just talk to him? Tell me about your family life. What do you do? If I don't know you and you want to know more about what you do, that's just a time to ask some questions about church life, but also just personal questions. So when we say interview, it's not like, hey, I need you to quote 5 scriptures for me right now, ready, set, go. That's not what it is. All right. It's also it would be how do you believe that God has gifted you with the Spirit? What spiritual gifts do you think that you might have, and how do you plan to put those to work for the edification of King's Fellowship? So questions that we're trying to kind of boost you. Once we have home groups, we probably say, are you in a home group? If not, which home group do you plan to attend? Or do you need help getting into a home group? So it's not a scary interview. It's just a meeting where we can get to better know you and you get to better to know the pastors. We'd also ask for a written profession of faith. All right? A written profession of faith. And that might not be something that you have ever done. Josh, you just did it. You did a fantastic job writing out your testimony. And it's something we want to ask everybody to do as they become a member, so that we have that. And also we're able to present that to the church to say, hey, church, they profess Christ. Here is their profession. Y'all are welcome to read this or hear it being read to you. And that way you as the church can confidently say, hey, we affirm that. That is a credible testimony. Or, I got a lot of questions about that. Okay? So we want to always ask for that, because professing Christ is very important. And then we would, after that, you would be presented to the church. So, Renee and Eagles and Rain are being presented to you, King's Fellowship, to be members of the church. You'll have 2 weeks to ask them questions, to ask us as the pastors questions, and then in 2 weeks we rejoin and we say, hey church, do y'all affirm them as members? And everybody says, yes. Any no's, any objections? No. We foresee this happening at our member meetings that we would do at a different time other than our worship service. Might be right after the service, but it wouldn't be during our worship service. Now, one thing that you might be asking is, how in the world are we going to hear profession of faith from everybody in this room before April 6th? Or you might be terrified that you have to stand up here and give your profession in front of this room. What we believe is the best thing for us to do as we covenant together is we want to ask each one of you, as you're desiring to join King's Fellowship and be a member, to sign this covenant, to agree with our Constitution and bylaws, to be in the life of the church, we want to ask you to write out like a one-page testimony, a one-page profession of your faith. And the way you can think about that is, who were you before Christ? What did God do to change you? And who are you now? It's just the three things you can think about, and how do you know that you are a Christian? And who do you say Christ is? And we want to help with that. Like, if you have never had to do that, you've never thought about it, maybe you think your profession of faith is like your whole life story, we want to help you kind of narrow that down to be able to say, hey, this is who I was, this is what God did, and this is who I am now. One, for us to be a church, but also, like, evangelistically, as you learn to share your faith with other people. We want to help train and help disciple everybody in that if you need help. So what we're going to do is ask you to write that and go ahead and start working on that and email it to us. We have it on King's Fellowship, Gadsden.com. King's Fellowship, Gadsden@gmail.com. You can email that to us. And what we want y'all to do is, if you have questions about somebody in here, a little suspect, you're like, David, I'm not sure about that guy, I need to read his testimony. One, come ask him, let's talk about it. Or you can reach out to the pastors and say, hey, I would like to read so-and-so's testimony. And to just, we talked about it, but it wasn't really clear. Can I read it? Something like that. We want those available to y'all. So we're not going to have everybody come up here and, read their testimony off. We think that'd be fantastic. Don't make us think that's fantastic. We think that's just the most efficient way and the most congregational way that we can moving forward. But then after that, we would, at a members meeting, have somebody share their testimony and then walk through that with them. So, any questions about that? Anna?
With the professions of faith, I think I know the answer to this, but just to clarify, you say a page, is that?
Page-ish.
Page-ish, so it could be more, is there like a limit to it, like?
I would say no more than 2 pages, because,
Okay.
And it's not like MLA format, double space, times 12, let's check all your grammar. Don't worry about all that stuff. We should be able to communicate, efficiently, clearly. But two, some of us, we have things like, hey, there was a lot that God did in order to save me. So we don't want to say, cut everything off. But if you need help, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I was asking just like, is it going into a place where if someone wanted to read all of it, they could, or does it need to be a certain length for efficiency or presenting, which is what you just said? So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, both. We do want to keep these so that we have record of our members.
Okay, so to sum it up, any group of Christians that meets in a building is not a church. Biblically, what is distinguishing us as a church, we covenant together. That there are certain things we are obligated to one another to do as Christians in a local church. You are obligated to those in a local church in a higher sense than any other Christians on the face of the earth. And so us covenanting together is accepting that obligation. When we read the New Testament, we have all these commands. We'll look at more next week. All these one another commands that Paul and Peter are writing to us, and we see in the Gospels as well, are writing to local churches about what God expects us to do for those that are alongside us in these local churches. And so there is a particular obligation, or to use this word, covenant, that we make to one another that makes us a church. And so to join a church, you are making that sort of covenant to the people that are in that body. We've said before that the vast majority of the time the word church is used in the New Testament, ecclesia, is talking about local bodies of believers. It's not talking about the universal worldwide church. And almost every command given in the New Testament is given in that context. And not about Christians everywhere, but the Christians that you are obligated to or covenanted alongside. And so what this looks like for you guys who have been here and going through these membership classes in the evenings and those things, becoming a member as a large group of us, I believe, will, on the day we covenant together, is for you to read through this covenant and make sure that you are good with it, ask us questions, talk to us about it, and it will be signing that covenant. It will be seeking out us for that pastor meeting at your convenience. We will make it work, so you come to us about that when it's a good time for you, and we will make it work between now and then. then a written profession of faith testimony, which will be open to the congregation, and then we will have that affirmation of the entire church of those things. And we want to have, again, being congregational, that the congregation has the authority. We want you to have the ability to read any testimony that you like. We encourage you that if the people that are becoming members that you don't know very well, what an opportunity. It's a great time where we're a relatively small church where we can know each other pretty well, everyone that you're joining alongside as members. And so we encourage you to make the necessary effort to do that. The Bible assumes, the New Testament assumes that you're going to know the people in your church pretty well, and have real relationships with them. So we can make that happen, and it's easier for us if we do it on the front end.
So think about the beauty of this practically as a church. So you've got your testimony that you wrote out, you've got the covenant that you signed, and as David said, we plan to keep those things. So, like we talked about last week or the week before with God forbid, there's ever a case where, one of us, and I'll say one of us, because it could be any of us, like, we're to stray, and we're in a disciplined situation where, first of all, we're talking one-on-one to each other. I mean, even that member could come to us and say, hey, that person's testimony, they wrote for that covenant they signed, because I want to talk to you about it, And they could bring it to them. They could go, remember he wrote this. Like, do you remember? Like, do you still believe this? And so the beauty of having that, the beauty of being able to come back to somebody. I use this as a picture of marriage all the time when I'm doing weddings for people. I take a time during the ceremony to tell the bride and the groom and say, look out at all these people. And look at these people standing on stage with you as bridesmaids and grooms. They're here as witnesses because one day when marriage gets hard and it gets really tough, they're the people who should come to you and say, I was there the day you made that promise. I was there the day you made this covenant together. And so that's why they're there. So that's why we're there for each other. We have these things and we're able to kind of go back and we can say, remember that? Remember you wrote that? Remember you said you believed that? And I've seen that work in countless situations. So that's the beauty of having these things together, is to be able to go back and remember. And even if you're struggling, if you say, man, I'm just struggling, I'm just in a hard place in my walk right now, I need to remember what I wrote, 10 years ago or whatever, and we can go back and we can look at that, and we can say, yeah, this was what the Lord was doing in your life at that point, or this is how you had to be faithful. So one more thing about bylaws, I think we'll go back to, I'm sure we'll say some other things about it, but so also as we're doing things for our children, 20 years down the road, also we want to do a favor to your friends that you're inviting to church. And so that's what, if they want to read these things, what we believe. There's been many people who have said, I want to go to that church, I want to see what they believe, and read it. And there's just churches we know of that that have a nebulous statement of faith, that you can't figure out what they believe. And so this is a favor to the people that you're inviting. You can hand them this and say, this is what we believe, and it's clear, and it's right there for you to see. So we want to do that favor for those guys too. So.
Yeah, that's great. David made the point as well, to emphasize again that we are no different than you in this. We are becoming members in the same way. Being affirmed as pastors is its own thing, but we're becoming members along with you. You have to be members before we can be elders. So that's along with us as well. Okay, any questions on that before we move into prayer time together? Any questions about any of those things? We encourage you to read through this. Please reach out to us with questions. Any thoughts, any statements, agreements, disagreements, additions, omissions, etc. Please let us know, and we will talk about those things.